everyone? My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you as always. A lot of stuff to talk about. Donald Trump may be losing one of his key constituencies that he tried to really go after in 2016 to a lot of success. He just lost a big part of that constituency, and he got in a little bit of trouble. We'll tell you why that is in the wake of his Elon Musk interview. Also, New York Times has a pretty big profile piece out, I guess you could say, or I don't know, a splashy piece about how Pelosi helped push out Joe Biden. We'll go through that. And also, we will give attention to something that obviously just has not been getting enough attention, the situation in Gaza after 100 people were killed in an attack on a school. We'll give you the full update on that and some of the really awful things. And, you know, how the U.S., of all people and of all countries with a lot of influence on this, has decided to respond. We'll give you kind of the full details on that and why it is so important and why really, you know, despite what the Democratic Party is essentially openly saying at this point, they will not be getting the issue of Palestine, issue of Gaza go away anytime soon because, you know, well, I guess we'll tell you why later in the show. You got to keep listening. It's Newsflash. So we have to start with this. It was a conversation 2 nights ago, or last night, whenever you happen to be listening to this, between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Probably not the smartest move for either of them, and it does kind of call back to the time where Ron DeSantis launched his campaign on X, Twitter, whatever, with Elon Musk, and it went just as badly. It was really not good microphone quality. It seemed like Trump had, bitten his tongue to the point where it's swollen, and or just had some sort of lisp. And apparently that was not helped by the quality of microphone. But it did seem like there was a role being played by his actual health condition. But it really was a lot of kind of a memorable moments in the call. Probably, my most memorable creepy moment is this. So this is Trump on the live stream talking about Kamala on the front of the Time magazine cover in the story that we talked about on our last show. And this is just so weird.
And actually, She looked very much like our great First Lady, Melania. She didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman. So we'll leave it at that, right?
Yeah, so just really, really weird. So she almost looks as good as our great First Lady Melania. Is an incredibly weird thing to say about the person that you're running against. Like people on Twitter, I saw this kind of funnily being put. That one of the big problems Trump's going to face is if he gets attracted to Kamala and he's struggling to control it. Because she's looking very regal, as I said in the last show on the cover, but. Perhaps one of the more serious kind of policy moments was this moment where he actually talked to Elon Musk and said that he admired a certain thing about how Elon Musk kind of handles his businesses that kind of does go against trying to get union support, because he really has made a pretty severe effort to try and bring in union support. We'll talk about some of the things that he's done, but and a lot of union voters are still going to vote for him anyway just because they're culturally conservative. But in terms of really turning the tide, and so much stuff we hear from, the J.D. Vances of the world about, this pro-labor, populist Republican conservatism that is coming and is growing in steam is really looks pretty stupid now.
Oh, you're the greatest cutter. I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say, that's okay, you're all gone. I want to close.
Yeah, so that is Trump talking about how essentially Elon's biggest thing is, and he very, it's only one of 3 companies that Elon Musk, quote unquote, runs. So it wasn't really that hard to figure out that he was talking about firing workers at Tesla and the UAW. is trying to organize them currently, and he was talking about, isn't it so great you just fire the workers for striking? Like, it does a lot of interesting kind of political implications here, because it does make Shawn Fain look very, very good. And kind of the news piece of this is from New York Times. Tim Bulk, the United Automobile Workers Union, filed charges with federal labor regulators on Tuesday, accusing former President Donald Trump and Elon Musk of threatening workers during a live stream conversation a day earlier. And again, I think, to the real actual marriage situation, I think it is fair to say, this is a threat. If you're talking about with the former president and current top presidential candidate for the next presidential term, about, I'm going to fire these workers. Isn't this so great? They're openly laughing about it together and enabling it. It is something where this is casting a chilling effect over union organizing. And it is really definitely something that people should stand up against, because it is not going to go without impact. It's like to go without notice in these Tesla facilities, where you have people watching this and people are like, should I sign this union card? Well, Elon Musk is really going to come down hard. That is a real thing. In terms of the political level, you can kind of go through how this affects three different people. And it's Donald Trump, it's Shawn Fain, who is, again, UAW president, who's filing this today, and it's Sean O'Brien, who recently is president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. And, I'm actually, fun fact, I wore their shirt. I bought their shirt, right, and I'm wearing it right now. And he tried to speak at the Trump, or he did speak at the Trump RNC just a few weeks ago, and kind of got killed for it. But from a lot of different sources, we covered how there is essentially a challenge to his leadership within the Teamsters union, and he not looking too good here. And he, with this decision and the fact that now Trump is going with one of the richest people in the world on this Twitter live stream, and he is bragging about firing workers. And this is somebody who you did kind of cozy up to and talk about how, it was so cool when he got shot. But again, to be fair to him, it was a immensely different political environment. Biden was still in the race. Trump had just gotten shot. He was soaring so high in the polls at that time. It definitely wasn't the smartest move, especially with how, there's no real contest in terms of who's a better president for labor. And it really does put to bed, for Donald Trump, this kind of, populist, this populist business here about, J.D. Vance, I'm going to criticize Wall Street. I'm going to sponsor this bill with Bernie about, regulating Wall Street in this very small way. I'm going to talk a lot of lip service to unions. He showed up at the picket line with this other representative. We played the sound when he first got picked, but J.D. Vance has tried to show up this picket line. This Democratic, middle of the road Democratic representative named Marcy Kaptur, who was also there, but also, by the way, who's incredibly good at defending a pretty Republican seat there in Ohio. They're both at the picket line, and she was like, "Hey, it's your first time here?" This is a middle of the road, not very left-wing Democrat at all, and she's even, she's used to this in terms of being a pro-labor party. It's just more instinctually in the Democratic blood, and you can see with Trump, and, despite J.D. Vance's, best messaging efforts, I don't believe, he has any real love for unions deep down in his heart, but despite his best messaging efforts, Trump seems to really have rejected it here, and that's how it does affect Trump politically. It takes away this ability for him and for Vance to kind of run this real true right-wing populist ticket that they were able to run much more effectively in 2016 with things like Drain the Swamp and all this kind of anti-Wall Street, anti-monopoly kind of rhetoric about, big businesses kind of taking the jobs away to a certain extent, and not, it wasn't all immigration. There was a lot of establishment rage that was being channeled. And if you're just talking about, firing, striking workers, I feel like in a lot of parts of the country, people will be like, oh, that's a great idea. That's that's, they should just really go and do it. And a lot of those people are going to be Trump supporters, but, and there's also a lot of Trump supporters out there and people who are in those kind of working class positions who really just rebel at that and may have given Trump a second pass, but may be a little bit more hesitant. But yeah, for Shawn Fain, Sean O'Brien does have kind of a chance to U-turn here, because he very much, kind of backed himself in a corner. The political environment has changed. And he can essentially say, this guy, he's ridiculous. He's already come out against him, called him economic terrorist, which I think is a great way of putting it. But he can really say, come out, I'm going to endorse Kamala Harris. I'm going to throw my weight behind Kamala here. Even though a lot of my members, they're generally like Trump, they're probably going to vote for Trump anyway. I can't be, as a union leader, someone who's joking around with the richest man in the world. I can't support somebody who's joking around with that guy talking about firing striking workers. Just can't do it. So I think that's something that he should do. But Sean Fain, filing this worker charge, continues to catch win after win after win. While Musk does have a reputation as a ruthless job cutter, particularly at X, formerly Twitter, where he laid off half the workforce shortly after buying the company and has been found to engage in anti-union tactics, Trump may have conflated different episodes across Musk's business empires from the New York Times. Well, no. He's talking about the fact that he's well known to come in and also fire striking workers at Tesla. The NLRB found him in 2021 to have illegally fired a single Tesla employee for engaging in union activity, and also firing some SpaceX employees for circulating a critical letter. Musk insulted Sean Fain, the president for UAW, on X. A spokesman for the Trump campaign, Brian Hughes, called the complaint against Trump a shameless political stunt intended to erode the former president's support for American workers. But he said it. He said it, Brian Hughes. What support for workers you're talking about? You're getting less and less on this record by the day, the supposed great amount of support for workers. The UAW was making a novel use of the labor law in targeting a politician, but, it's about time to try some new things here, and Sean Fain definitely has the mind to do it. It's not likely charge that's going to be kind of able to stick, but under the NLRB or NLRA, the act, the actual law, it's illegal for employers, to threaten to fire workers in retaliation for union activity. So a good move by Sean Fain, continuing to be, pretty much undoubtedly right now the leader of the working class movement and organized labor throughout the country. So good for him. Next up, I want to get to this kind of splashy New York Times story that we have for you here today. And it is all about some good old-fashioned Democratic Party drama. So this is by Annie Carney reporting from Washington. When Joe Biden visited San Francisco as a freshly minted senator and single father in the early 1970s, it was a well-known local fundraiser and stay-at-home mother of 5, Nancy Pelosi, who lent her Jeep to get around town. Over the next 5 decades, the two old-school Catholic Democrats who grew up in the era of Elvis Presley and were inspired by, again, she's older, by the way, than Biden, who were inspired by the election of the country's first Catholic president, John F. Kennedy, cultivated a natural friendship. They discovered that they both carried rosaries in their pockets. They learned how to wield power in Washington as leaders of top-tier committees, the House Intelligence and Appropriations Committee for her, the Senate Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committee for him. In May, at the twilights of their long careers, Biden, 81, awarded Pelosi the Presidential Medal of Freedom, anointing her the greatest Speaker of the House of Representatives in history. That was then, but it's all changed after the debate performance. Pelosi's been making a big book tour, which has kind of given her the opportunity. And we played, I believe, a clip of when she's, I'm not that impressed with Biden's political operation on the show, or at least talked about it. And it really gives her an opportunity to really attack and distinguish herself as somebody who, even though she'll never say it, she doesn't have to say it. And there's almost even more power in that she was the one to come in there and finally put the nail in the coffin when it comes to the success of Biden's presidential ambitions. And that is a very, very kind of powerful moment for her. And it seems it's cost her kind of her relationship with Joe Biden. And it seems that Pelosi, she admits it keeps her up at night. I hope so. I pray so. I cry so. I lose sleep on it, she said, about the relationship with Biden that's going on for 50 years. She's about to, possibly, lose this relationship in the late 1980s when she was first elected to Congress and spending time in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, the beach her Baltimore-based family loved to go when she was growing up. Biden invited her to a party to introduce her to Democratic donors out there. There was a minor mix-up. The golfer Nancy Lopez was in the news that summer, and many of Biden's friends thought the mystery guest he was showing around was the famous athlete. Pelosi smiled politely and did not correct them, a story she enjoys recounting. At the 2013 Mass for the installation of Pope Francis in Rome, in which they attended together as part of the presidential delegation, Biden, the vice president, and Pelosi, the House Minority Leader, both received communion. Together, they set off an outcry and debate within the church about whether it should have been denied to them, given their positions in favor of abortion rights. It talks about how here Biden was one of the first people to call Pelosi after her husband got beat up with that hammer a few years back, and it seems like it was a genuinely tough thing for her to do. And it is crazy to say, and again, it does kind of grind my gears to have to say this because she has been, a political enemy of the left wing and progress in a lot of ways, but she is one of the very few people in America who actually, stands above the rest in terms of a politician that can get stuff done and knows the stakes of the moment and knows what the moment means and knows, just, again, how to wield power is a great way of putting it. But also, she gets the sense that she can make things happen with her decisions. And, whether, a lot of politicians probably know that, but they try to avoid it. And she didn't avoid it. She said, this is what I have to do. It's not going to be pleasant, but I know I have the power to do it. I know how to do it. And I know it has to be done, so I'm going to do it, even though it may cost me my longtime friendship, which, for somebody in a personal relationship like that, in the personal context, that obviously is going to weigh really, really heavy. And think, if she hadn't done that, Biden very well still could have just gone through and been officially nominated, as a Democratic Party nominee. It's been really big. And she's kind of had a smart policy where she hasn't admitted to it, which has kind of allowed her to not have to criticize Biden, but she has been very, very harsh with Biden's staff, which is something I completely support and respect. She told David Remnick of The New Yorker, "I've never been impressed with their political operation. They won the White House. Bravo." What forced her to intervene uncomfortably in his political future said is because she was Biden's team, not Biden himself, was not facing the facts of what was happening. And again, this is where I would disagree with Pelosi. It's his responsibility as well as a very grown man and a president to take a step back, see what's happening, see how realistic this thing is, and to make a certain decision, as Pelosi kept hinting, that he could have and should have made on his own. So she attacked Mike Donilon, one of Biden's top gatekeepers. We talked about this for weeks on the show, but for a particular scorn, saying, "I didn't even know what Donilon did. I thought he was a speechwriter," which just got to be, some kind of Washingtonese burn for sure. Donilon recently left the White House to help oversee the Biden campaign. Well, not going well for him, is it? In an interview with the New York Times columnist Ezra Klein, she raised questions about whether Biden even wrote the letter, which is something that I think a lot of people kind of ignored. It didn't sound like Joe Biden to me, she said, implying that a member of staff or family may have written it for him. It really didn't. This was the letter to Democrats, not the letter about him resigning, but it was a letter that said, the matter is over. I am staying in the race in early July. Pelosi, again, reluctant to really play into the role that she had in pushing Biden kind of aside. She said, "I never called one person. I never made one call." But people close to Pelosi said that her role should have come as a little surprise in that she's clear-eyed and cold-blooded and will ultimately do what is ever in the best interest of the Democratic Party. And again, just the bottom line here is, someone who's really focused on business, knows how to, actually knows her moment in history, can see things more broadly and more clearly than most people. And not only that, but also, more importantly, is willing to act on it. So, again, some respect to her on that, even though she is definitely somebody who I did not agree with and did not share the same vision politically. It is very refreshing in a world of just complete political incompetence up and down the political spectrum, even on the left. Definitely on the left. I don't know why I'm saying even on the left. Just political, zeros in terms of talent, in terms of getting things done, in terms of, just winning. It is refreshing to see someone like that, even in her last years, still making a big difference. Apparently, she was also pretty big behind picking Tim Walz as well. So now kind of for a pretty hard shift from American politics to the genocide in Gaza, we have to talk about the recent strike that was in Deir al-Balah, which is kind of north-central part of Gaza on this I believe it's called the Al-Tabrin School, which killed around 100 people. And this is a pretty great report from Al Jazeera, and great in the detail, obviously not in the events. But it talks about how in early Saturday morning hours, 24-year-old Sajida Al-Ghafarna was sleeping with her family inside a school classroom, and they were woken with a huge explosion. We reassured each other that we were okay, but when I noticed my father's empty place, panic set in because he had gone down to pray dawn prayer, said Sajida. Sajida's family was among the roughly 2,400 displaced Palestinians sheltering inside Al-Sabin school. Her father, Abdul Aziz Al-Ghafarna, was inside the school, a small mosque, when Israel bombed the building. Sajida paused, holding back sobs. My mother, my siblings, and I all rushed to find him. The school was ablaze, and everybody was screaming hysterically. She recalled speaking to Al Jazeera over the phone from the Daraj district in central Gaza City. Sajida described the harrowing scenes as she frantically searched for her father among the dead. One person was still on fire, calling for help, but no one could save him. He burned in front of us, and no one could get in to help, said Sajida in a trembling voice. People, again, this girl's seeing people burning alive. It's, unimaginable, just a few years older than myself. We tried to douse the flames. Then we used our mobile flashlights to search for my father because it was still dark. She remembers scrambling over the torn limbs, trying to find her father, her clothes and her hands getting covered in blood. Sajida, her 5 siblings, and her mother spent nearly 2 hours searching for Abdul. Then my mother broke down, screaming at us to stop. Enough, let's go back. Your father was torn to pieces, she recounted. The family returned to their classroom in a state of collapse, but Sajida couldn't rest without finding some trace of her father, so she sneaked out again with one brother to continue their search. Civil defense crews tried to stop us, but we insisted, Sajida said. Soon afterwards, she found Abdul's body in the corner of the mosque, buried under the remains of the other victims. Again, this is why a lot of people think this was intentionally timed to kill as many people as possible. It's a precision strike when they know dawn prayer is going on, and they kill people like Sajida's father here, and so many more. Some of the more widely spread, I guess, incidents on social media we're going to go through for you. But, it's so important. As we just sent another, $3.5 billion in aid that we're going to give you the details in a moment. But, it is so important to get a sense of this is what you're doing every day when you take home a paycheck, when you work hard in whatever job that you do, whoever's listening to this right now, or whatever, you buy anything, whenever, you pay taxes in any way, shape, or form, a portion of that money is going to this stuff. And, not only, if you've ever thought about, what you would do when you first learned about, the Holocaust, how you would respond, even if you were halfway across the world, this is the moment to take, in my opinion, any moral stand that, 1 or 2 levels above what you would normally be comfortable with, push yourself to speak out, because this is stuff that is literally happening in our name, literally happening in our name with our hard-earned money. And I think that should be the thing that is the sense of urgency that should drive every American to speak out about this stuff. And again, it's not just like, oh, we're sending money to some, dictatorship. That's something we do, all the time. But this particular country is doing crimes like this, potentially targeting people in the mosque section of this school to kill as many people as possible for this dawn prayer. It is absolutely unbearable. The Israeli attack on the school killed more than 100 Palestinians, including women, children, and elderly people. Israel said it struck a Hamas command and control center for Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters. Hamas rejected the kind of claims. And this is kind of important here as we see the ceasefire. They've repeatedly attacked schools in Gaza where people are sheltering, and there's been really no convincing evidence from any kind of, really, that's when I say convincing, I mean, verified by a non-Israeli source that these have been any real Hamas command and control centers. And even if there was a Hamas command and control center, it does not in any way justify killing 100 people to get to it. 100, elderly people, and I thought this is such a warning. This is a precision guided strike on the part of the place, specifically in this complex where people were doing the dawn prayer as the dawn prayer was happening. So, it is unbelievable. Israel is known to step up attacks as ceasefire talks progress as a pressure tactic. And I think it's important to say, Hamas has agreed to, remember that deal that the speech Biden gave from the White House about the deal, Hamas has agreed to that deal in full now. And Israel now is still adding more terms that Hamas is refusing to accept because they say, oh, we've already accepted a deal. It's a deal that Biden and the UN have both come out and support. Now it's on them to make Israel support and accede to this deal, which I think is a perfectly fair and sensible tactic because, how much more are you going to give away? That was already a deal that gave Israel the opportunity to get all its hostages back and continue the bombing. And there's still Hamas, big, bad, scary Hamas, is agreeing to this. And Biden is not forcing Israel, and Israel is definitely not, doing it anyway, any kind of ceasefire talks or contributing to them in any way. They're literally bombing all throughout Gaza right now. So it's just not happening. So without providing any evidence, Israel claimed to kill 19 fighters. Yesterday, they decided to bump that number up to 31. A probe by Al Jazeera Sanad verification agency found that Israel targeted and killed civilians by sending precision bombs to a prayer hall housing families in the men's chapel below as morning prayers were starting. Israel made again, this is specifically U.S. weapons, and they were used in some of the worst massacres of this genocide. Israel used the U.S.-made GBU-39 SDB bombs in its attack, which were deliberately timed to cause maximum casualties, according to this investigation. The Euromed Human Rights Monitor nonprofit organization said its initial investigation showed there was no evidence of military operation at the school. Ash Hamdan, the senior researcher and coordinator at the Forensic Architecture Unit, investigation unit of Ramallah-based human rights group Al-Haq, told Al Jazeera that military footage obtained from the group's field researchers showed no signs of military equipment at the school. Hamdan noted what was visible were cooking utensils, mattresses, and bedding, showing that the space was being used as a shelter. Hamdan also said that Israel's list of alleged fighters includes people that have previously been killed, all the way back, in December in some cases. And the organization is in the process of verifying 31 names, but they've already found at least 3 people. This is pretty well-respected. Al-Haq, the human rights organization, has found 3 people that have already been confirmed killed by Israel months ago. And, of course, they were civilians and not actually Hamas fighters. So, Al Jazeera spoke to some of the families of victims Israel claims were fighters. The families refute these claims, obviously. The victims included a hospital administration director, a retired principal, a scholar of Arabic language and literature, and a man who was killed in December. For Sajida, the shock and devastation of losing her father was only compounded when she saw his picture on the list issued by Israeli army of alleged fighters killed in the strike. So the person from the beginning of this story, her dad was called a Hamas fighter by Israel. So it gives you a sense of just how exactly, just horrific this stuff is, and really how it is a crime against humanity in every sense of the word. Manar El-Tif, was devastated by her father's death in Saturday's attack. Like Sajida, she was shocked when she saw photos of her 65-year-old father, Mohammed El-Tif, among the individuals Israel claimed were fighters. Manar says that her father's life was far from politics. My father was a pillar of my life. He used to tell me, "You were my princess." He was very caring about me. He loved my children, his grandchildren. He used to drive them every day to school where I worked as a teacher, she shared. They would be in touch around the clock, and whenever one of his children was sick, her children was sick, he would worry and take them to the pharmacy or the doctor, Manar said, noting he was a father in every sense of the word. Mohammed was a retired school principal who had worked in government English as a government English teacher for the Palestinian National Authority's Ministry of Education. Manar told Al Jazeera, speaking from Egypt, where she and her 4 children, thank goodness, escaped to in February. After my father retired, he became active as a social reformer, resolving internal conflicts with local communities. Manar shared he loved attending literary seminars and conferences, in the area. And I think, it's going to be kind of a long show today because I think it's just so important to go through these stories and highlight them, about the people these are people who are killed in cold blood as they go to pray, and they're being smeared now as, terrorists and Hamas fighters who, deserve to die and were normal casualties of war. This was one from the incredible Palestinian translator and journalist Yunus Tirawi, translating this post for us on his Twitter account at @ytirawi, Tirawi, and it reads, "I came to search for the remains of my son, who had gone ahead to the dawn prayer." This is from this Saturday attack. "Someone gave him a bag of 23 kilograms and said, 'This is your son. Someone gave me, a bag of 23 kilograms, just a bag of remains, a bag of human remains of 23 kilograms, and said, "This is your son. Bury him." As I carried him, I remember today when I was coming back with him from the market, carrying a heavy bag. He, in complete filial piety, asked to carry it for me. He went to his mother happily, boasting of his manhood, singing in front of his siblings, and teasing them that he had carried all this weight alone for his father. His siblings embraced him, and his mother prayed for his long life in goodness. Now once again you precede me with the bag to the house, my son. But how do I convince them that you are the one inside it, that your laughter, which used to fill the house, your thin arms that you used to spar with your siblings, your head that used to rest on your grandmother's lap, and your feet that tirelessly searched for water, all have become one in this bag? When your mother asked me in a bitter Gazan tone, "Do you know if there's any electricity, Abu Salah? Where will I store all of this? All the goodness that we give to the neighbors? How will I tell her, my son, that what's in this bag is not suitable for charity, and that 23 kilograms of remains is our share of death this week?" So, that's just one of these accounts that, we are enabling. Like, this was done with the pieces of America's collective paycheck. This is done with our tax dollars. This is death and crimes against humanity, genocide, every day that we are funding. Things like this happen every single day since October 8th. And another one of these really, really awful stories, and we'll hear some more of that clip there just in a second, but was from Muhammad Abu al-Qumsan. So he was on his way to register the birth of his newborn twins, which is, think about that for a moment, just carrying twins for a full pregnancy in the genocidal environment that is Gaza, with so little food, famine going around, is nothing short of a miracle. And he was on his way to register his newborn twins, and you can see, on the Facebook, posts of his wife, that people were sending warm wishes, congratulations, what a miracle, praise Allah, all that stuff. And when he got back, this was his reaction. You're hearing the sighs, the wails of this man, because when he came back to register his 4-day-old twins at the government office or whatever, he came back to find a precision strike on his house, and both of his sons, his two twins and his wife were killed. So the 33-year-old new father had just left Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah, where he received a call telling him to return to the hospital. I got a call from the people in the neighborhood I lived in. "Muhammad, are you okay?" He said, "Where are you?" I asked them what was going on. They said, "Nothing, just come to Al-Aqsa Street. They bombed the house." Qumsan was just around the corner from the hospital, describing the moment he received the news. I tried to get back in the car and came back right away and found them in the refrigerators, martyred. So, this is a newborn father here, and he talks to Middle East Eye. I said, "I'm the husband of the martyr, Dr. Jumana Arafa Abu al-Qumsan, and my children, my twins, Asar and Isa, they were targeted today after they were born on the 10th of August. And you can just see the pain in his face. They were martyred on the 13th of August. His wife and his two young twins, 3 days after their birth. All is sufficient for us. I live in an apartment, and the apartment is in a safe area because my wife needs some special care because she's pregnant. No shit. So this area that I went to is an area within the humanitarian areas, and it's declared within humanitarian areas. And I live in towers, and all the towers are there, meaning there are people and families in them, a safe area. And that's why I was renting in this place, or staying in this place. And, I think one day we'll find out. I would really love to know. I'd be interested to know, what was going on in the tank, where they were in Gaza, or whatever, military outpost that the IDF decided, okay, we're going to go in this place that we know is civilians. We know there's no mosque. Is it, like with the Lavender situation where they pick based on this AI algorithm that, there's a man with his family and, they essentially automatically target him as a Hamas fighter because they set this algorithm to essentially be as broad as possible, and then wait till, again, wait till he goes out to kill his family. Like, what is the process here? Like, how can you internally, like, what is the eternal process? What's the banal process that justifies striking this family with a newborn, two newborns, and one, just freshly just given birth mother? It is unimaginable, absolutely unimaginable. And again, something that with these bombs that Americans are going for, we're doing it every day. And we are essentially, this is from Al Jazeera just a few days ago, we're sending $3.5 billion to Israel to spend on a U.S.-made weapons and military equipment, the Department of State has said, as the deadly war in Gaza continues in its 10th month amid claims of widespread Israeli military abuses in the occupied territories. A State Department spokesperson said on Friday that the department had notified Congress on Thursday that the Biden administration intended to release billions of dollars of foreign military financing to Israel. U.S. broadcast media first reported on the release of funds, which comes from a $14.5 billion supplemental funding bill passed by the Congress in April. The supplemental budget comes on top of the more than $3.3 billion in annual U.S. military aid to Israel. So again, U.S. media there is confirming it. And this, to give you a little bit more about where these weapons are going to, the State Department notified Congress on Thursday that the Biden administration intend to release this billions in aid. So part of this new financial aid is actually going to go to an Israeli military unit, which is accused of carrying out human rights abuses against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. This State Department has said it decided against sanctioning that unit, which would have been the first ever blocking of aid to the Israeli military unit, or Israeli military, period, saying it was satisfied with the Israeli efforts to address violations by this unit, which have been effectively remediated. So, and again, of course, the Israelis have done nothing. So, it's, again, the bare minimum sanctioning one of the many, many IDF units that have engaged in clear war crimes was too much for Anthony Blinken and the Biden-Harris, emphasis on Harris administration, because if Harris wants to chart a different path, she needs to actually chart a different path, at least if she wants my vote. Again, I'm not going to be the vote police, and I would strongly disagree with being the vote police, especially if you're trying to get something done and be, productive politically. But I think it's fair to ask Kamala Harris, running for freaking vice president, to differentiate herself on this before she gets elected. And, if she doesn't, then I think it's fair to assume that she wants to do the exact same thing that Biden is doing, especially with regards to the Netzeh Yehuda battalion, which has been historically based in the occupied West Bank. So the battalion and some of the members have been linked to the abuse of Palestinian civilians, including the death of a 78-year-old Palestinian-American man after his detention by the unit in 2022. So again, unless Israel attacks you, if you're an American, will respond anywhere. But Israel can do whatever it wants to you as an American citizen. We do not care. Green light was given to Netzeh Yehuda. That comes after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken determined in a finding made public in April that an Israeli army battalion committed grave human rights abuses against Palestinians, triggering an investigation under U.S. legislation related to U.S. military aid forces to foreign forces known as the Leahy Law. So in the face of the protests from Republican lawmakers over the finding of abuse related to the battalion, Blinken said he would continue to aid the unit in order to give Israel time to address the wrongdoing. And again, so this comes as there has been really no effort to actually go after these 10 Israeli soldiers accused of brutal gang rape. They've now been released. This group is not going to be sanctioned by Blinken. And so again, I think it's very clear, the note that we have to end on is a note that we've ended on a lot in this show since October 7th, which is the Biden-Harris administration is completely happy to go along, support, and enable at every turn the war crimes and the deprivations of Israel, throughout this war, every single step of the way. And that's something you should never forget. If you care about Palestinians as humans equal to yourself, when you go to the ballot box in November. All right, so what I got for you guys today. We're back on Friday. It's Newsflash.